Well folks, at the time of writing this video, BattleBit Remastered has officially been in early access for exactly 1 year. I don't think it's really sunk into me just yet how fast time has truly flown. Like, I've blinked and 365 days have just gone by like that. And I'm sure many of you can relate, but nonetheless, that's a milestone that we have crossed here today. And I will be honest, I never really predicted that the game would be in this position at this time. The game experienced success beyond its wildest dreams. You know, a peak of over 80,000 concurrent players in the game at one time, with 1.8 million copies sold within the first 2 weeks of the game's release. It's a success story that sounds a bit like a far-fetch for a game that now hasn't had an update in what's going on 8 months. So, what's happened? What has the year of BattleBit Remastered since launch looked like? What are the highs? What are the lows? And most importantly, what can we learn from it? G'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today folks, I want to do a no-nonsense, complete retrospective of BattleBit's first year as a live game. So join me as we take a walk down memory lane. So folks, to start off today's video, I think we need to take even a few steps back before the actual release, you know? Speak to the build-up of that release and what was going on for BattleBit Remastered as it was finalizing its playtests and getting ready to launch into early access. And I gotta be honest guys, the hype for this game was quite simply unreal. There was nothing else like it in the first-person industry at the time that was captivating gamers in such a way. And there's certainly some industry-wide context that's important as to why this game was so hyped. At the time, Battlefield 2042 continued to flop its way through its post-release support. It was still very much a shell of what players were expecting from the likes of the Battlefield franchise, and BattleBit in turn, and in response almost, was promising a feature-rich, gameplay-driven gameplay experience by comparison that Battlefield fans simply wanted to get their hands on. They took one look at BattleBit, saw the scale of the matches, the destructible environments, all of that, and went, yes please, I'll have some of that. Me personally, I first got around to BattleBit about a year before its early access release, and I personally immediately fell in love with the game. The gameplay that you're seeing in the background now is from my very first ever session with the game. And man, if you just take one look at the gameplay comparison to where it was then versus where it is now, man, we have come such a long way already. But anyways, as we get close to that actual release date, the hype was building and bubbling away. The playtests were hitting 20,000 concurrent players. The streamer weapon skin program commenced with yours truly being the pilot for this program. The helicopters were starting to be tested regularly and finalized for the final release, which brought us to this pinnacle moment that we captured live on my Twitch stream just prior to the game going into early access. Take a look. Oh, event?
Wait, event starting?
What the fuck?
What?
Event? Bros,
Ah,
I'm scared.
what the fuck?
I'm scared. Hold me. Hold me. Hold me. What event? What is this? Oh god, we're on black screen.
Oh!
BattleBit Remastered going into early access in.
Oh!
Just play the trailer for everyone.
Playing the
Hell
trailer!
yeah.
Holy shit, let's go!
2023. Yeah, no shit.
We know.
Yeah.
June, there we go. Hey! What the fuck, boy? Oh my god. Oh.
Before we forget.
We forget.
Final playtest.
In 48 hours?
No, 48.
What?
48
Oh,
hours.
it's doing it.
Okay.
Oh shit!
Shit, son.
I bled out.
Yo! It was a moment where the developers simply dropped a teaser trailer in the game client for those to enjoy, announcing both the release date and the final playtesting session. The hype, again, in that game, in that moment, in that stream, was something unheard of, and it was a real sense of accomplishment from the wider community and the developers to go, we finally have a release timeline, and we're finally ready to show BattleBit to the world. Let's do this together. And by the way, guys, if you do want to see more of my live stream content, jump on down to twitch.tv/kamikaze78. First link in the description down below. It'd be great to have you guys over there on the live streams as well. But back to the topic at hand, that moment led to the end of an era for BattleBit, the end of the playtesting phase as the game moved in to its release phase. And I don't think any of us, from developers to the wider gaming industry to the community itself, none of us saw what was coming. Quite simply, guys, BattleBit crashed records as far as its concurrent player counts was concerned. The word of mouth pushed this game out so fast and so fiercely that the developers were having server capacity issues on day one. Content creators far and near started to cover the game, some of which scoring their also own unique weapon skins in the game as well to assist them in promoting the game to new viewers. Many referenced it as the Battlefield of yesteryear that we'd all been looking for. And to make matters even better, the game received 5 new weapons and a brand new map at launch, being Tensortown, to appease to the audience who had been playing the game for a while. New players were discovering everything for the first time, and the veterans had a bunch of new toys to play with to keep them interested. And in addition to that, the developers came out swinging with a bombshell, stating that another new map, that being the reworked version of Namek, was to be announced and released within a week of the release of Early Access. This was so much content in such a short period of time to such a degree of quality that it was nothing nigh of a holy shit moment for the broader FPS community. After years of getting disappointing releases and half-assed projects from a lot of game franchises that we'd all known and love, maybe this was finally the feature-rich, large-scale first-person shooter game that we were all looking for. Maybe this was well and truly the turning point of first-person shooter games for the long run. This was a massive task at hand for the team of 3 that brought this vision to life. And looking in, a lot of the concerns around the community were already centered around the development team and their capacity for a project of this size. And those fears were already being realized when the developers started speaking to the massive scope of what the game's plans were immediately after the release, speaking to some of the major updates they were planning on doing that would take, in theory, months to complete, or even third-party assistance. It was at this point, only a mere couple of weeks after BattleBit Remastered released into early access, that the developers had already started hinting the idea of an audio update to the game. Yeah, that's right, the audio update that we're still waiting on first got mentioned in July of 2023. But on top of that, the developers came out swinging, talking about the likes of brand new content in the form of vehicles such as MRAPs, buggies, attack boats, and even gadgets such as barbed wire traps and new things to flesh out things like the support class. They were speaking of grand new features and grand reworks to try and flesh out the areas of the game that needed the most amount of work. The development team at the time was also very curious and very keen to talk to its dedicated content creators as well. I personally had a brilliant opportunity to sit in with a wide variety of content creators and the development team in discussing the future of the game and some of the more contentious items such as the balancing of the medic class and classes more broadly, things like general weapon balance and how metas should or shouldn't exist, things like the movement system, things like destruction, how vehicles were playing, all of the fun stuff. And we were given permission to broadcast this, also make videos on it, discussing our experience and discussing our views on this conversation on how things should progress forward as well. It was a very transparent way forward that also energized the community and gave them a sense as to where the thinking was for the future of the game. The community even started digging deeper, searching for leaks or any indications of any game content that had yet to be released, identifying a grand total of 34 weapons that had yet to be released to the game but were sitting in the files prepared and ready to go. A massive expansion to the armory that many were looking forward to getting their hands on, including a grand expansion to the likes of the support class, of which, at the time, only had 4 weapons available to it, up for grabs. So the news about what was coming was enough to keep the community energized, and it also helped to carry the developers as they started releasing the game's first post-release updates. The month 1 content update dropped, as the name suggests, exactly 1 month after the release of the game, bringing about the brand new Capture the Flag game mode, a chaotic yet true to form take on the old faithful classic game mode, and the Multu Islands rework came about, which again continued to demonstrate Velasquez's growing expertise in the world of map development and producing slightly more cohesive gameplay environments. This also marks the time that the first major, and I mean major, balancing passes came out. There was weapon balancing across the board. This was around the time when the infamous Vector submachine gun was nerfed. The trophy system was added to the game, prestiging cheating was fixed so that now players could prestige without losing their weapon-based progression every time. Lane spamming finally got fixed around now. Self-healing was added to the game for non-medic classes. The developers at this time were showing a true attention to detail in balancing their game and addressing the core pain points with the community in a timely manner whilst also adding content. The community was energized by this pace of updates, even though we were dealing with a 3-man development team. Again, it seemed too good to be true. It sounded like something was going to give at some point because, well, again, this is a team of 3 people. Can they truly keep this up for the long run, or are we just in the honeymoon period for now? And this unfortunately led us into BattleBit's first and major blunder. A blunder that can be mapped out on the Steam charts and demonstrates a key point in when community interest for this game began to fade slightly. And ironically, this came around the time of the community server implementation to the game. This is going to be controversial amongst many, I'm sure, but please hear me out, guys, because I truly do believe that BattleBit's introduction of community servers this early into its lifespan was actually one of its biggest mistakes out there. Community servers were finally brought to the game in September 2023, and Sergeant Okidoki, lead developer of the game, always had a vision of the game being community managed from a community server perspective, similar to the likes of the Battlefield 3 and 4 communities on the PC side of things. Which on paper sounds like a fantastic idea. It allows the server costs to be offloaded from the developers and placed back on the community, and gives the community a place to call home whilst keeping the player base somewhat healthy. It also allows players to frequent servers where they can form friendships and rivalries, which again helps to build up that community morale in the long run. However, Oki didn't just want community servers to be a replacement to the official servers of the game. No. He wanted them to be a completely customizable offshoot of the official servers. A place where the community was empowered to craft anything they wanted using BattleBit Remastered as a canvas for their vision. The scope of the community servers allowed for significant amounts of customization. Anything from movement speeds to class-specific gadgets being enabled or disabled, to weapon damage modifiers, to whether or not vehicles were present in the game in the first place, the whole kit caboodle. You could completely alter how BattleBit played on your server should you feel the need to do so. And obviously, the biggest concern that many had, myself included, upon the release of these community servers is that this would fragment a community so severely and so haphazardly that to a new player coming in, it would be incredibly difficult to identify what the true BattleBit experience was, to get a baseline to work from, to then experiment with community servers from that point onwards. And on the date the community servers went live, there was a bug that hit the server browser that defaulted it to community servers only showing up, and the game as a result looked dead in the water overnight. Now sure, it was a quick fix, and one that even the most attentive community members could find themselves just by selecting a few options in that server browser. But to those who were coming into the game, hitting that server browser, or even hitting the quick match function, expecting to find a game immediately, were suddenly handed dead lobbies. For a couple of days there, finding games in BattleBit Remastered was nigh impossible. And at this point, while the player count had already started to drop, this is the point in time where the trend was truly set in stone. Now, don't get me wrong, folks. The updates and the content are still coming at this point of the life cycle. The likes of the F2000 Assault Rifle and the G3 Battle Rifle were added to the game, bringing some much-needed life to a weapon arsenal that had not been updated in quite some time. The 2 new maps, Zalfi Bay and Kodak, were added around this time as well, adding some additional areas of war for us to fight in within the game. The developers were also continuing to make quality of life improvements around this time, such as window shutters, which helped to, add some readability to maps and ensured there were less angles for you to keep checking on. Even graphical improvements to the game's textures were coming. So the game at this point is still getting love and it's still getting support from the developers. But the community server backbone had at this point transformed BattleBit's entire community into what can only be described as divided up, subsetted communities that were all playing different subsets of BattleBit and different versions of BattleBit, but not the BattleBit original experience that we'd come to know and love. In the ANZ region in particular, you had 2 community server offerings and that was it. You had BBOCE, which was an infantry-only server with perks and killstreak rewards using the game's modifications, and then Aussie Battler Gaming, a more, classic take on the BattleBit environment, yes, but it was still a community server. In the ANZ region in particular, there was no longer such a thing as official servers. You had the choice between two community-run and community-moderated servers. And this identity that BattleBit had now formed, this environment where there were a vast variety of experiences held by different communities who had different visions for what the game should be, kind of exacerbated a core problem that existed at the developer level as well, that we only truly learnt more about 6 months into the game's post-release lifecycle. And to me, this places us very comfortably in the era of BattleBit that we are in now today. That being the era of the curse of perfection and the era of the identity crisis. Update 2.2.2 was the final update that BattleBit has received to this date. It brought about a new map, it brought about a new light machine gun, and it brought about a new game mode. But that was it. BattleBit to this date has not received an update since November 2023. It is now June 2024 at the time of making this video. And the main cause for this was the impending audio update. Remember that little chestnut that we mentioned earlier in the video that the developers were talking about soon after release? Yeah, we're back there again. The audio update is now in scope to be worked on, and it's now, intended to be finalized. Except at this time, alongside BattleBit Remastered's identity crisis formed by its community and the crazy amount of variation in community server gameplay, the developers also started to experience an identity crisis of their own, wondering if BattleBit had been amalgamated and formed and molded into something that they actually didn't really want it to become at the end of the day. After all, BattleBit at one point was meant to be a milsim game. The developers originally had the vision of this being a milsim game that any PC could play. Now it was the complete opposite of that. A large-scale Battlefield-esque shooter with arcadey mechanics at times. In the dev cast at the time, the developers began to express a sense of resentment to what the game had become versus what their original vision was. And as a result, while one of the biggest updates the game would ever receive was finally in scope for development, simultaneously, the game's very direction fell into question. And it burnt a lot of time in working out where the game would ultimately end up from a design perspective. And while we finally do have some guidance from the developers on what their grand plan for the game is now, despite their identity crisis that they had last year, the so-called audio update, which is quickly expanding its scope to be an update that touches every element of the game to further hone in on that identity that the developers want BattleBit to follow, that update was meant to launch in April of this year. And it wasn't even a loose deadline. There were splash screen advertisements in the game client itself advertising for the April deadline, advertising for the major overhaul patch coming mid-April. We talked about this quite extensively in my last YouTube video covering BattleBit Remastered, so again, feel free to jump in and check that out, card linked in the top right of your screen if you're interested. But the fact that we're now in June with no ETA tells us that we're going to be waiting for quite some time still. And it's very clear that unfortunately, as a result of the wishy-washy deadlines and a lot of the design issues that BattleBit has gone through in figuring out its identity, the wind has very much been taken out of the sails of what was once one of the most promising games to follow in the first-person shooter space. And I think the biggest thing that we can take to learn from with BattleBit's first year of development, and hopefully something that we can apply in BattleBit's second year of ongoing development, is that having a core identity and the core gameplay mechanics and core content of your game fleshed out should be priority number one, followed then by giving the community the ability to mold your game into whatever they want it to be using the tools that you're willing to give them. In my humble opinion, BattleBit's biggest fumble of its first year of development was the fact that it gave the power back to the community too early on. I know that's going to be the controversial take of this video. I most certainly get that. But I truly believe that BattleBit Remastered's community servers launched far too early. The game at the time was still a shell, and things like the audio update and the design direction, all that should have been worked out long before community servers were prioritized. Because again, if you look in BattleBit's server browser right now, there are a ton of community servers, some of which with differentiating rule sets and pop-ups and just stuff that deviates from the core BattleBit experience that new players now will not be able to form a complete understanding of what the core BattleBit experience is at times depending on their region of play. Now, unfortunately, we can't take community servers away. That horse has very much left the carriage in the dust as it stands already. So from now on, the only thing the developers can do is ensure that the BattleBit identity that they are going for is not only well communicated going forward, but is consistent and is stuck to. Some of the flip-flopping that we've seen as of late is simply not sustainable for this game. And making sure that at least from the developer side of things, they are clearly communicating what BattleBit is meant to be and is going to go a long way, I think, in bringing the players back to this game and reinstating confidence and excitement for what this game can well and truly be. I have got everything bloody crossed that the next major game update for BattleBit Remastered launches soon and launches smoothly. A lot is riding on this update and the future of the game, and if it goes poorly, then I fear the developers will have a very harsh life lesson coming their way. But until that moment hits, I will be eagerly watching and praying that the next major game update for BattleBit Remastered reinstates some confidence in the community and gets us back on the right track after what has been an incredible start to BattleBit's journey, and I'm only hoping this is one big piss-off speed bump in what is a long story to tell. But folks, that is my retrospective for BattleBit Remastered's first year of being out there and on the market. If you guys enjoyed today's video, it was something a bit lengthier and something a little bit different, please backhand the like button with all of your might, and if you're new here and you want to see more first-person shooter content from myself, then hit that subscribe button as well. We are covering a ton of games at the moment, and I can't wait to have you a part of the community. As a reminder, once again, check out my Twitch channel. First link in the description down below. It'd be great to have you guys over on the live streams as well, folks. But until then, and until next time, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.